Well, hello, everybody. I hope you're all doing well. Thank you so much for joining us today on this informational session for the Andrew W. Mellon Foundation Fellowship for Diversity, Inclusion, and Cultural Heritage. My name is Marian Toledo Candelaria, and I am the program manager of what we lovingly call the CHF. So I have been in my role since February of this year, and I am the main point of contact for anything that has to do with the fellowship. That includes daily operations and administration and any activities. And I want to welcome you all again and thank you for being here. Part of this informational session is has a Q&A component to it. Well, actually two. We have first a Q&A with our wonderful Cultural Heritage Fellows. We have 4 of them. Just so you know, they come from the first and second cohorts of the fellowship. And I'm delighted to present to you Aisha Khan, Asian Pacific American Community Archivist at Austin History Center, which is in the Austin Public Library. If Aisha, you want to say hi to the camera, that would be great.
Hi, everyone. It's good to see everybody on the call.
Thank you so much. We also have with us Albert Palacios. He's the Digital Scholarship Coordinator at the Lilas Benson Latin American Studies and Collections, which is at the University of Texas at Austin. And Albert, if you can say hello for the camera.
Hi, everyone. Nice to be here.
Thank you so much. We also have TK Sangwan, who is Librarian for Digital Collection Development at UCLA Libraries at the University of California, Los Angeles. So hi, TK, if you can say hi for us.
Hi, everyone. Good to be here.
Thank you so much. And last but not least, we have Margarita Vargas Betancourt, who is Latin American and Caribbean Special Collections Librarian at the George A. Mathers Libraries, University of Florida. Margarita, if you can say hello for us.
Hola to everybody, welcome.
Very awesome. So Aisha and Albert are in our second cohort, TK and Margarita are in our first cohort. So we have a good balance of cohorts, so you can get a good impression of how the fellowship works and what is the experience of being in the fellowship. But before we move to that, I want to give you an overview of the fellowship. And the fellowship was established in July 2019 when Rare Book School received a 1.5 million grant to fund this program. The main aim of which is to advance multicultural collections through innovative and inclusive curatorial practice and leadership. The program has 4 main core goals, which we try to address through the different components of the program. And it provides a space for cultural heritage professionals who are in the early stages to mid stages of their career. Those professional skills that will help them advance the career, but also will help them develop collections that are multicultural and share those collections with the communities in which they serve. So the 4 core goals are to develop skills for documenting and interpreting visual and textual materials in special collections and archives. We also want to raise awareness with professional communities about the significance of promoting, developing, and stewarding inclusive multicultural collections. We want to build connections with diverse communities and publics through strategic programming, outreach, and advocacy. And we want to advance careers of cultural heritage professionals, especially those who belong to BIPOC communities, LGBTQ communities, people who have been historically marginalized, broadly defined, by establishing new pathways and skills for professional growth. It's an ambitious program, but these are the 4 pillars that underpin everything we do at the fellowship and the offerings that we have. So there are 8 main components to this fellowship. The fellowship lasts 3 years, and throughout those 3 years, fellows have the opportunity to have an orientation, which for next year, for the 3rd cohort, will take place from the 4th to the 7th of April. We also offer for the 3 years, 3 summer courses, 1 course per year. And those RBS summer courses have to be taken. We have several parameters for the courses that you're supposed to take. First of all, from the courses, you want to take a digitally focused course from the L series. You want to also take another course that belongs to the B, the C, the G, I, M, or T series. And then your 3rd course can be an elective. Our offerings do change per year. So not all courses will be given at 1 year. And that gives you the opportunity to work around what are your ultimate professional goals and how you can choose courses offered in those years from the list that we have that meet those parameters, but that also meet your professional goals. And that's a very important component of the program. For the 1st year of the fellowship, we have the fellows attend the RBMS conference, a rare book and manuscript section of the American Library Association conference. That is something that we cover. We also, for that 1st year, have fellows take career advancement workshops. And those workshops are usually imparted before the RBMS conference. Those workshops are on professional development. This year, because of public health concerns and the pandemic, all of our offerings have been online. But we were able to conduct the workshops as well. So because you take the RBMS conference and the career advancement workshops in the 1st year, for the 2nd and 3rd years of the fellowship, you receive additional conference funding. That means that you're able to choose conferences that you think would be the best to advance your professional goals that are related with special collections, cultural heritage, archives, broadly defined. Oh, sorry about that. And you would receive additional funding for that. You can choose to attend RBMS if that's your preference, but you're free to also attend other conferences of interest. So one of the highlights of the program is that we require fellows to produce a community symposia. The symposia is very important because it gives you an opportunity to do a proposal and to receive funds to run a program directed to your community or to the community adjacent to the collections that you work with. And to have that be inclusive to the community, have it at your institution, and also to have it recorded or in some way that allows for dissemination, for access. You receive $2,500 for the community symposium. There are certain parameters to it, but more or less you're the ones who have to do the proposal for it. Also, as part of the fellowship, each year you are in the fellowship, you are asked to participate in a working group. Those working groups comprise of different fellows who are interested in specific topics. For example, we have working groups on advocacy, outreach, but those topics can change per year. What is important here is that for each working group, you are expected to have a deliverable by the next year. And every year that you can choose a different working group. We also hold cultural heritage field schools. We, of course, are aiming to hold one for next year, but you only have to attend one of the field schools. You don't have to attend one every year. And also, as part of taking into consideration what are the, if the program is hitting milestones and how is the program impacting fellows, we have mandatory evaluative surveys. And those surveys are taken at the beginning of the fellowship, towards the end, and thinking several subsequent years to make sure that, you know, we have information on the impact of the fellowship on your career. Now to the slide on eligibility. So for eligibility, we have 4 main parameters. You want to be an early to mid-career professional, currently employed full-time in a US cultural heritage institution. That means you have to have at least 1 year of full-time work in a position that has to do with cultural heritage by the time of the application deadline, and up to 15 years working in the field. So it's between 1 year full-time experience to 15 years full-time experience. Okay. That has to be working with special collections and or archives, digital initiatives, in a cultural heritage in the library or a museum. But as long as you're working with those special collections and archives, that's something that you qualify for. In addition, the eligibility is open to individuals who are members of diverse racial, ethnic, and or LGBTQ communities, individuals from low economic background, individuals with disabilities, or professionals working with collections that document these groups. The vast majority of our fellows belong to BIPOC communities, but not exclusively. So you can be working with communities and collections that document any individuals that come from these groups. And one of the, I think probably one of the more innovative aspects of the eligibility requirements is that we don't require you to have an MLIS or any other graduate degree, although that is desired. We do take into consideration that people that come into the cultural heritage field come from a diversity of backgrounds, and not all of them come through your traditional formal channels of graduate degrees. So we do require applicants to have a bachelor's degree. But again, we take into consideration how you're able to be in the field, how you're in the field, and have the experience that you have, even if you haven't had an MLIS. I know that a lot of interested applicants have different circumstances. I invite you to email me directly if you're not sure if you qualify. You can email me at chfellowship@virginia.edu. and with any questions about eligibility. And I'm happy to be able to help you out. And in order for you to know the full parameters of eligibility and have more information on the program, I invite you to visit the page, the CHF page on rarebookschool.org, and the link is in the slide. So now I want to come to the really fun part, which is to hear a little bit more from the fellows for, you know, the experience they've had of the fellowship so far. So I want to invite the fellows to the Q&A. Again, Aisha, Albert, TK, and Margarita are, you know, ready to answer all of these questions. So these are the questions that we're going to go over it, and I would like fellows to, you know, start with the first question. How did you hear about the fellowship? And we can start with Aisha if you want to take it away.
Sure, thank you. And thank you for having me here. It's a real honor to talk about the fellowship. I first heard about it when they opened the call for applications during their first cohort. A mentor of mine actually forwarded the opportunity to me. And at that time, the timeline of the fellowship activities didn't really align with my own personal and professional timeline at that period. So I just made a note to revisit the fellowship when they put the call out for the second cohort. So that just really worked out better for me. So that's how I first heard about it, was through a mentor of mine.
Okay, great. And Albert, are you ready
Hi.
to tell us? Yeah.
Yes. Thank you for having me too. My story is very similar to Aisha's. I heard about it when it first came out through a colleague, and I think I also received an email from the Rare Book School. And I really wanted to apply for it, but I didn't because I was finishing up my dissertation. So I decided to just hold off on it and apply the following year when I would have more bandwidth. But that's my story.
Okay, great. TK, would you like to go next?
Sure. Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for having me here. I believe I found out about it over Twitter. I can't remember who exactly posted it, but I read through it. I thought it sounded like a great opportunity. I ended up reaching out to Bethany Novisky, who is the former head of DLF, because I saw she was on the advisory board, and asked if she thought it might, if my experience might fit with it. I'm not trained in rare books at all. I don't really deal with that in my day-to-day work. But she encouraged me to apply and she said that my international experience would probably be of interest. So I just put that out there in case you think your experience doesn't completely align with what the fellowship is doing. I think it's really up to you to find the connections between why you're interested and how that applies to the work that you're doing or where you want to go.
Awesome. Thank you so much, TK. And I think that point is really important. This fellowship specifically is open to less traditional ideas of bibliography and book history and archive work. So those of you who are outside those traditional parameters might have work that qualifies to apply for the fellowship. And Margarita, how did you hear about your fellowship? About the fellowship?
Well, my story is very similar to my colleagues here. Several, like the chair of my department and a colleague forwarded me the call. I think I also got a direct email from RBS, and I must have seen it in social media also. It was well advertised, I have to say that.
Okay, that's great to hear. So I would like for you guys to talk a little bit about what motivate you to apply for the fellowship. And you're free to share any anecdotes you want. I don't know if Aisha wants to take it away.
Yeah, sure. I was attracted to the fellowship for a couple reasons. So as Marian mentioned, I work for a public library system in Austin. And so a lot of my work has been really focused locally. And as a lot of public library systems, I work in a very predominantly white system. So I was really excited not only to build community and skill share with other library and archival workers across the country, but also across different types of workplaces. So public like during my experience over the past year, I've had the opportunity to not only work with folks that work in academic libraries or in special collections, but also community-based archival workers, other public library systems and regional museums. So that's been really exciting and not an opportunity that we get very often on day to day, especially during this pandemic time where travel budgets are being cut down significantly for my public library system. We're not sure if we'll have a professional development budget moving forward. So just having the funding and the space to continue to network with folks in the field was really valuable to me. And then secondly, I've never participated in rare book school activities. And to be honest, similar to, I didn't really actually have it on my radar before. I didn't know if it was a good fit for me as someone who works in community archives. But learning more about the fellowship and talking to people who were currently in the first cohort really made me excited about exploring the opportunities that the Rare Book School has, and understanding that while I do a lot of outreach and community-based programming, I don't always have a lot of space to take coursework in the technical aspects of my work, or really homing in on the identification of collection material that might be in my care. So those two are really big driving forces for me when looking at the application.
Yeah, and one thing that participants here want to take into consideration is that there is quite a bit of space in the fellowship for public librarians. We have quite a bit of them in the second cohort especially, and for anyone working with community archives. Thank you so much, Aisha. And Albert, would you like to share your motivations for applying?
Sure. A lot of aspects of this program really drew me in. I was part of this program in the Rare Book School. It was an early librarianship, and I think it was like the early incarnation of this. This is kind of like the full-blown version of that. But that one experience, which that program was primarily taking a class with a cohort of early career librarians, and I just remember fondly, making connections, forming a community with them. I'm still friends with them, so I enjoyed essentially having the opportunity to nerd out with other fellow librarians and archivists and cultural heritage professionals. So I really enjoyed that aspect of it. And this one in particular, I was really drawn to the conversations around ethical practices, community outreach, essentially building community around communities in some way or the other. And so for me, I was really seeking that out, just being able to find peers who were thinking and trying to grapple with the same issues that I was trying to grapple with, with special collections related to underrepresented communities, and how to tie them not only to the communities where they, where the materials represent, but then also to students, communities, et cetera. So I was really interested in just having these conversations. That's what really drew me in. And then, and for this particular program, there's just so many opportunities for us to do that. And we've had a couple of those already, and so far it's been a great experience.
Oh, thank you so much, Albert. That's really great. And I think a very important part of the fellowship is building community amongst practitioners. And it's very important to do that. Margarita, would you like to share? Why did you decide to apply?
Sure. Well, one of the factors that made me decide to apply is, like Albert said, the community aspect. When I applied, I had been working at the University of Florida for 9 years, and I am in charge of archival collections and rare books. And I was kind of tired of seeing the white colonialist perspective dominate. So for me, this was an opportunity of moving towards community-driven programs, initiatives, projects, and that it was an opportunity to decolonize the archives at my institution. And on the other hand, it was also like a great opportunity to grow my career. And when I got the fellowship, a lot of the Center for Latin American Studies, for which I am an affiliate faculty, advertised it, and the director told me they were very proud of me. The Center for International Studies also had a spotlight on that. So it did help my career, and as a person of color, that was very important.
Thank you so much, Margarita, and thank you for sharing your experience of the impact that having the fellowship has made to your career. That's kind of the next question that we want to discuss is, what has been your experience of the fellowship so far?
Marian, did you want me to answer that question or no?
You skip TK.
Yeah, sure.
Okay, so I decided to apply for the fellowship.
I'm sorry, I forgot. Sorry, yes, go ahead.
Mostly because of the cohort aspect. I thought that was a really special part of this program that it's a 3-year program. So you really build relationships, not only within your cohort, but across the cohorts. And that's what the working groups really facilitate, because it's a mixed group of people from both cohorts so far. I have worked primarily with digital archives. And so I've never had much experience or opportunity to work with print culture, with rare books. And because my direct job responsibilities don't apply to that, it's really hard to get funding to do those types of classes. And so that's what this fellowship has been really amazing for, to allow me to branch out a little bit more and grow that professional knowledge. So I think those were the 2 primary factors: being able to learn something new that I wouldn't otherwise, and really build across the cohorts, because it's so rare, especially in this predominantly white field, to have the experience of learning in spaces of color where BIPOC folks are the majority.
Thank you so much, TK, for answering the question. I'm sorry I skipped I skipped you accidentally. That was not intentional of me. So now we can move on to question 3, which what has been your experience of the fellowship so far? And Aisha can start.
Yeah, I think, given during this time where there's so many unexpected transitions and changes, and the inability to meet in person and kind of shared ideas in person due to the pandemic, I've still really been impressed and with the experience with the fellowship program. I think the program management staff around this fellowship have been incredible and have brought so much creativity and dedication to the program that I feel like I've still had such a meaningful experience, and have been able to meet and form bonds with people in my cohort and the cohort before me. I just completed my first RBS course in early August on the identification of photographic materials. And even though all of the courses were migrated to virtual this year, it was still an immersive hands-on course. We got delivered, a kit of different photographs and really great tools to use. So I really felt like I still got that hands-on experience that the Rare Book School is known for. And in addition to just sort of the technical expertise and the professional development opportunities, again, just all of the opportunities to skill share with my colleagues that are part of the fellowship program has been really, really invaluable, and has also inspired me to make more space to look at my own professional development plan and my own career advancement plan, and having both the support of the fellowship staff as well as other people in the program to bounce ideas off of and see where they're headed and what their goals are like has been really, really inspiring.
Thank you so much, Aisha, for sharing your experience so far. Albert, would you like to share?
Yes, I'm going to second everything Aisha said in terms of what the experience has been. The remote nature of things right now, the context, unfortunately hasn't led itself for us to gather together in the room and have these conversations. But even remotely, Marion put together, Gather Town, which is, an interface that we use for orientation, which I personally loved it. The whole 8-bit characters, whatnot, but, that really enabled it tried to emulate, as much as possible that one-on-one interaction that I, so far have felt has been really important and valuable in this internship. I've had the opportunity, to talk to everyone here, or at least the panelists, in terms of different issues, and just having those frank conversations with them, and also the facilitators so far have been really rewarding, in my opinion, at least in my experience. the RBS class that I took, it was digital approaches to bibliography in book history. So it lent itself to the remote nature of it all. And of course, it allowed me to really nerd out. As I mentioned, I really enjoy RBS courses. So it's a continuation of that wonderful experience I've had, just in a different format. But overall, I've really enjoyed the conversations that I've had with my peers here, and I'm looking forward to more.
Thank you so much for sharing your experience, Albert. That's really great. TK, would you like to share?
Sure. So I would say my experience has been really positive. I was in the first cohort, so we were in that, that all happened during the first year of the pandemic. And I think the program staff really did a great job of trying to bring us together in spite of those challenges and adapt things very quickly to an online space. And so I really appreciated how thoughtful they were and how they did that and how receptive they were to suggestions as well. I took 3 courses this summer. I tried to take advantage of the fact that this was all the courses were online and that there were shorter courses that you could do. So that was a cool way to do my first year of RBS, although I really can't wait to be able to take a class in person, because I think there's nothing that can stand in for that experience of like working physically with materials. I guess I would also add that as someone who's a little bit further on in my career, I've been working in libraries for 12 years now. I think some of the professional development activities might not feel quite as useful, but I just encourage folks to just find ways to make it work for what you want to do, basically. But I think that's, just what happens when you try to build a program that accommodates people with little experience up to 15 years. So that's just something to keep in mind.
Great, thank you so much for sharing your experience, TK. And Margarita, would you like to share?
Sure. Well, I think that the 2 things that I have liked the most about the program is first the networking. Even though I wish it had been in person, it was very nice to see people I knew before, but also to meet a lot of new people. And the Gather Town, which was the platform that we had for the orientation, was very good. That and the working group has also allowed me to know other professionals in the field. It's been challenging, but I really like that. And perhaps the other part that I have enjoyed is the fact that you have to structure the next years and have in mind goals, specific goals related to the fellowship, because that has forced me to get out of my comfort zone and really work towards have a vision and work towards making it happen. In this case, it's I'm hoping we get invited to apply to an MLS national grant, national leadership grant, to create partnerships with farm worker organizations. And this fellowship has given me the motivation to continue, and even if it's extra work.
Thank you so much, Margarita. Very important to find more motivation and community within the program and outside of it too. So I want to move to the second to last question is, what is your advice for applicants to the fellowship, or for those who are interested in applying?
I think we already sort of mentioned this when talking about the first question, but really, if you are either BIPOC or from another traditionally underrepresented community and you are interested in this fellowship, you deserve to apply, and your voice really belongs. It's part of this fellowship cohort. I remember when looking through the application materials, I had several moments where I experienced self-doubt or questioning whether, my work in community-based archives and working really outside of the special collections field was a good fit. And it was really due to some colleagues in the first cohort and being able to have conversations with them. They really encouraged me. So like TK mentioned, just really demonstrating how your work connects and deserves to be a part in conversation with, themes and topics that are being explored in special collections and rare books. So really just knowing your worth and applying. And then secondly, just give yourself plenty of time to work through the application, because it is detailed and there are many different components. So just giving yourself plenty of time to sit with the essays to complete them fully.
Great, thank you so much, Aisha. Albert.
My advice is just to be more broadly, don't be afraid to contact folks that you want to learn from or that you're interested in connecting with. At most you won't get a response, and that's fine, but I think it's, at least for me, it's always been worth it to just, shoot an email, friendly email, and just, spark up a conversation in the profession, right? But also just in general, just being able to amplify your network, but also just be able to get to learn from other people's experiences has been really helpful for me and really formative to how I am as a professional now. So just kind of general advice. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Very important to be proactive. TK?
Yeah, so Aisha summed up, what I like is my primary piece of advice of, each of our experiences are unique. So it's, I think it's hard to give advice of like, you really just have to tie your own experience to why this fellowship would be important to you in your work. But I guess if I were to give like something more not more substantive, but a little more specific, check the courses and see what looks good to you. And if you want to, you can reach out to folks, as Albert said, and see who's taking those courses, so you can get a sense of what that would look like, what that actually looks like, and how that might tie into what you want to do.
Great, thank you so much for the advice. Margarita?
I don't have new advice, so I'm going to be repetitive. I would take the opportunity. I think doing the application, applying, even if you don't get the fellowship, is an excellent exercise to review your career and to think about your vision. So just do it.
Thank you so much, Margarita. And just want to give you the opportunity to give participants here any final thoughts that you would like to share, and any of you can just give your impressions.
I think now is a great time to apply, just because we saw during the pandemic there were lots of new classes added to the schedule. Like, for instance, I took Why Black Bibliography Matters, African American Print Cultures, the brand new course from Tulane about textual technologies. So it's the course schedule seems really dynamic. So maybe there's something that you'd be interested in that's going to be added next year. You never know. So don't just base it on the current course catalog alone.
Great, that's really good advice. Thank you. If we don't have any final thoughts, I really want to thank fellows for all their insight into the program so far. We really appreciate having professionals like you in the program, and so far the fellows have done such a phenomenal job, not only within the fellowship, but working in their own projects. And I think that it's, for me as a program manager, is a pleasure to be learning on a daily basis from such an inspiring group of people. So looking forward to keep working with the fellows, but also looking forward to the third cohort and what would they have to bring to the table. And with that, I would like to move on to talking about what do you need to apply. So before you apply, I do suggest because the application has several components, I do suggest gathering them before you move into the online application, which is done through Interfolio. So the main components of the application are a cover sheet, which is completed in Interfolio. A curriculum vitae or resume should be as updated as possible. One confidential letter of recommendation, which can also be uploaded via Interfolio. You have 2 short essays that have several questions. So each essay is multi-question. And those are listed on the CHF webpage. And you have a PDF form that is signed by your supervisor. And that form, what it does is that your supervisor acknowledges that you're applying for the fellowship and that they would give you the time off you need to complete the mandatory activities of the fellowship if you were to become a fellow. So I have some tips for applying for the fellowship, and I would say some of them are a little bit more general. Like I said, I think you really want to gather your materials early and do it beforehand before you sit in the application website. Especially when it comes to the PDF form, you might want to discuss the suitability of the fellowship and your intention to apply with your supervisor before doing so. So it's very important that you have those conversations early on because the application can take a little bit of time. This is the opportunity for you to include all of your service and outreach work in the curriculum vitae. Because that will make it very apparent how you're qualified for the fellowship. And you really want to put your best foot forward and in a way that it's very explicit. One thing we want to keep in mind is that Rare Book School staff does not make the decision on who becomes a fellow or not. We have a selection committee who does that. And that selection committee is comprised of senior level cultural heritage professionals that through the applications and they make selections on who are the finalists. Well, we have a set of readers who read each application about 2 or 3 times before they select the finalists, and then the selection committee makes decisions on who becomes a fellow. So these are professionals that don't necessarily know you and your work, so you want to make sure that you represent yourself very clearly to them. One advice, very important here, is that the 2 essays that you're required to write, make sure that you're answering all the questions in the essays, because like I said, there's several questions, and you want to make sure that you represent yourself to the selection committee as clearly as possible. The essays can be an opportunity to clarify your eligibility for the program in case you've had a non-traditional path in cultural heritage as a professional. So you want to make sure that the essays really convey everything that we ask of you and that give a good sense of who you are and what are your professional interests. And that was tip number 4. You think about your application also as a whole package. So you want to make sure your eligibility is clear throughout the application, because it's important in order to put your best foot forward. So when you apply, you go to this website, which is the CHF webpage, Admissions, Awards, Fellowships, Mellon Diversity. Once you click on that website, you will land on this page. You want to scroll down and reach application process. Once you arrive at application process, there are several links here. And since they're not buttons, they might get a little bit lost. But you'll see under the first link, you have to create an My RBS account. My RBS is the portal that we use for applications, especially course applications, but we also use it for scholarships and fellowships. So you would have to make an account. The application, here in the page, you have the instructions and the requirements for the application. And most importantly, before it gets kind of lost in translation, in this link that says PDF on the last bullet point, you have the link to the PDF form that needs to be signed by your supervisor. And through that RBS account, you will reach eventually Interfolio. This is how my RBS online looks like. You'll come to this portal. If you have taken classes at Rare Book School or have applied for a scholarship or a fellowship before, you'll have an account. If not, you need to create a new account. Assuming that you have not had any involvement with Rare Book School before, you will click on create an account and land on this page and fill out all the required fields, including reading the terms and conditions. And then you would land on this page. This is the main portal where this is your profile at MyRBS. It will look like this. You have several buttons here. The last one, apply for a scholarship or fellowship. You will click on there. You come to this kind of intermediary page. I told you it's quite a process, which you will scroll down the page and land on the specific application for this fellowship. You'll click here to apply now for the Cultural Heritage Fellowship, and you will land in Interfolio. So right now, if you were to follow all of these instructions, the landing page at Interfolio will look like this. Applications open tomorrow, September 1st, so you won't be able to apply right now. And this is the evaluation process for the applications. The deadline for applications is November 30th. From there, we start evaluating applications, or external readers start evaluating all applications, and then shortlisting to select finalists between December of this year and January the next year. By February, we're conducting interviews with the program manager and co-authors of the grant, who are the assistant director of Rare Book School, and Danielle Culpepper, who's director of finance. From there, the finalists are required to submit their RBS summer course choices before we make a decision on who are the fellows for this last cohort. And that is by late February when that decision is made. The selection committee, will select 15 fellows. And we should be giving information on the selection by March. And this is the presentation so far. I would like to invite you to put questions in the chat, and I would like to stop sharing the screen. We have some pre-submitted questions that I would like to provide first. And I think that I'll start with one which is a little bit of the elephant in the room, if you will. I'd like more information about what are the requirements for the fellowship. As a recent MLIS grad, current PhD student focused on book history and women of color, I've found a lot of gatekeeping and aggression in the rare books profession, and I have not been able to get more than a year of experience as an intern when I was a student. The field seems to be tight-knit and shows scarcity of jobs. What more can we do to get into the field? So I hope that the presentation has covered some of the aspects of what it is, what are the requirements and the eligibility for the fellowship. And I think this is a really good opportunity to acknowledge that these are issues that are very problematic in the field. I think that we have to acknowledge that it has been a field that has been historically white. It does continue through that vein. We do acknowledge how difficult it is for professionals who are from underrepresented communities and identify themselves as such to break into the profession. And I've been in the fashion industry, I've been in academia, and I can definitely say that has been an issue in other industries as well. I wonder if any of the fellows would like to speak a little bit more to that.
I can reiterate, I just put it in the chat, but I think that's a specific issue. And I think we all have very specific issues that share similar parameters or similar hurdles for some of us, or for most of us. And so I think this fellowship has provided a space for us to candidly talk about them. And some of the facilitators have also, and part of that conversation, it's almost also a collective brainstorming on how we can address them, or how administrators can address them, but through our advocacy, et cetera. So the fellowship is actually, it's a very good opportunity for us to kind of discuss it and figure out ways that we can overcome some of these hurdles.
I'd also just chime in to say that I think in the tips for applications, it was recommended to include all outreach and service in your CV and resume, but I would say, like, even in your essays or other application materials, you can incorporate other lived experiences that make you feel like you're a good fit for the fellowship, even if you haven't been, if these rare book spaces have been, shut off from you. Talk about maybe other projects or things that you did prior to your graduate degree that makes you a good fit. I mean, as someone who hasn't had any experience working in academic libraries, I had to draw on a lot of other community-based experiences that I've had that I saw fitting in conversation with these other issues that might be happening in other library spaces.
Great. Yeah, that's really great. And I think it's also important to acknowledge that although this fellowship is, inspired to tackle some of these issues, systemic issues really required systemic solutions. And we hope that we can provide a space for having some of these conversations and to inspire work that will align with addressing some of these issues. But of course, we're not claiming that we're going to solve everything through a fellowship. But I think it's very important for applicants to know that we understand precisely how difficult and how present these issues are in the field. And it's important for us to acknowledge that and to give a space to have the conversations and address those difficulties. Otherwise, it's very difficult to move forward and to open new ground.
Marian, there are
yes.
2 questions in the chat that I'll just highlight, and you can answer them in whatever order you think it makes sense. One asked, is it recommendable to have more than one letter of recommendation? And the other question was, what are the guidelines for the symposium, and what does RBS require for it?
So letters of recommendation, we only ask for one. So it doesn't necessarily add to your application to have 2. If you're required one, you can just have one. And for the community symposia guidelines, this is an opportunity for fellows to really outline a program that will fit with their communities. We do require, for example, that they are held at the fellows' institution, as opposed to, an outside institution, for example. But we also, it should be available somehow, or the proceedings should be available somehow. But this is an opportunity for you to really think about what are the needs of your community and how your institution can help address some of that, and how can you promote those multicultural collections, and how can you really think about bridging links with communities that sometimes get don't get as addressed or don't have the opportunity for making those connections and having those voices within cultural heritage institutions. There's another question. I'm an artist educator who conducts research in archives, special collections, libraries, and not a librarian. Would I be eligible to participate? If you do have a full-time position at a cultural heritage institution and have at least 1 year in a full-time position at a cultural heritage institution, the answer is yes. If not, then you might not be eligible for the program. So here's a really interesting question. Am I eligible to apply? I'm employed full-time in academic library in a post-MLIS fellowship residency, but I'm assigned to 2 departments, one being special collections. The issues of full-time employment, I don't think it's an issue that you're assigned to 2 departments as long as you have a full-time position. We have also, are people with PhDs eligible for this program? Yes, say hello to Margarita and Albert. We do have PhDs, especially in the first cohort. There are more PhDs than in the second, but you're welcome to apply. That's certainly not an impediment. So would you consider an applicant who has experience in libraries but desires experience in projects in cultural heritage and archiving? I think that depends on the type of position you have. It's possible. I would invite this person to give me a little bit more detail via email. You can write to chfellowship@virginia.edu. And we can talk about your eligibility if you think that you still have, you're not sure. Okay. I think these are all the eligibility questions that we have for them, and I'm looking at the chat. Okay. So yes, as I mentioned earlier, the working groups for this year, as TK has put in the chat, we have community outreach, we had advocacy, and we have ethical practices. They might change next year. So it gives you an opportunity for trying different groups and working with different fellows. And one thing I wanted to say about these groups is that there's quite a bit of overlap between those 3 topics. That is something we had in mind, and it gave fellows the opportunity to define the topics on their own, so they can come with their own projects that have a deliverable for next year. So it really gives you an opportunity for thinking strategically about topics and gives you experience in working with deliverables with a group of fellows. Okay. Wonder if I've addressed all the questions. I'm looking over the chat. Okay. I think that's all addressed, right? Okay, awesome. Well, I just want to say it's been a pleasure having you here. I want to thank Aisha, Albert, TK, and Margarita for being here with me, sharing their experiences, being very candid about how this fellowship has impacted them so far. And I hope that with this presentation, you'll feel very motivated to applying. I can't wait to see the applications come in. I'm very sure that we'll have super competitive application pool, which we've had for the first 2 cohorts. So I'm very sure we're going to repeat the competitiveness. With that in mind, if anyone has any questions about the application process or has specific circumstances they would like to discuss, I really invite you to get in touch with me. And I'm putting my email in the chat. And as this session has been recorded, it will be distributed later on to participants. And I will be sending you the slides for the presentation to everyone who registered. Thank you so much for your being here, for your interest in the program. I'm very humbled by the interest that we received from you. And I look forward to receiving an application. So take care.